All right. We are live. How's it going, everyone? I don't know who's watching yet. Probably no one, but that's because we just started, so that's okay. But I'm Devin. This is Farzan again here. We're going to be talking about money today. We actually have a guest on who is what I would like to call he probably wouldn't say necessarily, but I think he's a bit of a whiz when it comes to financials and how to deal with money. I've known him for quite a while, and I think he has a really interesting perspective on just everything, money, and how to survive and all that. So it's kind of cool having him on here. But here is Kyle. Bring him on. Put him on camera there for a second. As I said, I have to switch between Farzan and Kyle. So today, like I said, we're talking about money, but also in the subject of documentaries and movies that are kind of around it. We were going to talk about The Big Short, which came out in 2015. Sounds like my audio is good. Just double checking it. We had issues last time, but as I say, Big Short. And then on Netflix, they just had a new season come out called Dirty Money, which is a pretty interesting show, honestly. They have a bunch of episodes about different things that have happened, mostly American related. I haven't watched everything yet, but I know that there's the first episode does touch on a German company, Volkswagen. That was a really good episode. Anyone who owns a Volkswagen should totally watch season 1, episode 1 of Dirty Money on Netflix. So really good stuff. And another documentary, far as I was going to mention, was Inside Job, which I'm sure he'll have something to say about. But basically, getting into it, well, let's bring up these. I have some trailers I'll play behind us, but here is the trailer for The Big Short. This movie, if you haven't seen, I highly recommend it. Is honestly pretty educational as well as entertaining. And you saw this one, right, Farzan?
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
Oh, it was pretty good. It's kind of it's hard to watch it.
Yeah.
It has a really good music into it. Really good, like you said, educational at the same time, entertaining a story. A really good casting.
Oh, yeah.
So it's fun to watch it. It's fun to watch it now after the fact, but I'm sure the people who lived through that story, they didn't have fun. So
No, I doubt it. In a lot of regards, even the people making money, who were successful during the crisis, it's kind of interesting how they portray that with like Steve Carell. He comes into this, oh, I can make a ton of money, but after the fact, it's like, oh, this is like, I feel gross, or dirty money, literally, like I was talking about. It's just money that you made, but do you really feel like you earned it? I don't know. It's just kind of weird. But I'm sure Kyle could touch about that, just like the whole, money and making it and whether or not it's deserved. I don't know, but yeah. What did you think of this movie, Kyle?
Yeah, I think it definitely, well, it centers around this group of people who some were close to what was happening, others sort of figured out what was happening. But I certainly relate to one of the sentiments that they have in it, which is this sort of like audacious sort of response about, this is audacious, like what's going on here? It doesn't make sense. It's not adding up. It's completely irrational. Seeing the larger fallout, right, in of what was going to happen, the consequence of it, the course that the sort of the system was on, but also partly because of their role as far as being managers of money managers. It's important to capitalize on opportunities, and when you can foresee events that are going to happen. And so they were sort of compelled, obviously, to do that. But at the same time, they were also very, very like sick inside of what led to it,
Right.
The kinds of thinking and the kinds of behaviors that were contributing to it. And then also coupled with that, especially the Christian Bale character, is that, and I'd like to remember what his name is as well, who he played. It was the doctor.
Yeah.
He's a PhD in economics.
I can't recall the character either. Yeah.
Right, but so he was, he was kind of one of the first ones to put this together by actually looking at these mortgage-backed securities and these derivative transactions, just like bets upon bets, and seeing the level of volatility and the low degree of kind of quality mortgages that were getting wrapped up. And so he was seeing this early on, but then he also had to ride out the pain of it didn't culminate in the event of actually bringing him a profit for a few years. And as he reports, he lost friendships, and people wanted to sue him because he had to actually restrict people's access to pull money out of his fund at a certain point. So you see, these people who basically are being rational and trying to be rational for the sake of people kind of who, for the sake of greed, and trying to capitalize on and create fortune where there's going to be calamity, but then also being faced with this tendency of the system. It's not really eager to correct, and so this is an interesting topic for me to discuss, especially right now, because I think that there's some parallels, and I think that there generally have been. But one of the themes that we've talked about, that you've heard me talk about before, is that we are trying to separate as much as we can our financial system from the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
In the natural world, you end up reaching, some carrying capacity for maybe a species or for an environment, and things can only kind of bounce between there. And if you see things can get a little bit out of balance, something happens, a big disease or another predator comes into play, or they run out of food. And there are things that drive a population. That, just speaking in terms of biological ecosystems,
Sure.
that's a very positive feedback systems, that only allow you to go so far before it corrects you. But the financial system is one that the humans we come up with everything we can think of to reduce our vulnerability to any sort of self-correction. And for a rational person, who monitors that and looks at it, it can be very frustrating to not have a full sense of things. On the one hand, you have accounting, which is very precise and to this penny, and that's one aspect of money. But then you have financial engineering, which its whole goal is almost to ignore as many rules as possible. So yeah, so anyway, so that movie, The Big Short, I think did a great job capturing the sentiment of some of the people who would have been involved at the time, and who ended up walking away with hundreds of millions, billions of dollars as a
Yeah.
result of these bets they placed, but they were still in the middle of, I'm sure I'm right, but my goodness, does the system not want to, they're just picking up speed to the cliff. They're
I
not
know.
pulling back. It's like, let's just hit the pedal as even faster.
Yeah.
And
So Kyle, let me ask you this. You mentioned you use the word derivative, and that's the key word, I guess, in the whole housing crisis, right? And there is another actually good movie about the housing crisis, 99 Homes. It's a 2015 movie. It's a really good movie if you haven't watched it yet. So what happened is they're selling your, basically your loans, and they are making money, and then they are selling this kind of stuff. That's what happened in the Big Short you just explained. And then later on, apparently I was reading some news that our banks and financial institutes, they learned their lesson. They're not going to do the same things. However, they are doing the same things with the car loans right now.
Yeah.
So do you mind, like, for those that don't know what derivatives is and how they are selling your loan and making money off of your loan, explain in a basic English that how's that work? How do they make money off of those?
I think it's a really interesting question to ask, and I think the ultimate goal of derivatives is it's a way to fabricate, and it's a way to just financially engineer things that kind of don't exist in order to create a transaction. That's really, it's almost a ghost, and then you have derivatives on top of derivatives and on top, and then you combine derivatives and you package that as a derivatives, and it's almost like it's just. I'd like there to be a real world explanation, because it would make me feel better. But that's one of the things of this, even The Big Short, is that it's very difficult for them to convey what exactly these mortgage-backed securities and how they packaged them and then resold them on public stock exchanges, and how that all works, because we're talking about, transactions on top of transactions to get them into these bundled things that and yeah, it is mind-boggling, but I'd say that it's one of the elements that is drawn upon. So I guess it's better to start with what's not a derivative, right? We used to have a gold standard, so every dollar or every coin that I had, that meant some amount of gold, some little piece of gold that was being held at the U.S. Treasury. And gold has been a standard in economics for a long time. And even before that, even when we had the gold standard, one of the histories of banking was this idea that, okay, so I put some gold into the bank, and, I can come back and get that gold back out. And banks started to realize that, I put some gold in there. I'm not coming back to get that gold all the time. And they started to realize, well, we can actually give your gold to somebody else, and we can give them a loan, right? And then we don't even need to give them the gold. We just need to give them the piece of paper that says they have access to gold. That's a loan, and we'll charge them interest on that. And then they'll pay me interest because I have gold in there. So there's a little bit of a realistic thing. But then they started to pick up on the fact that they could have some ratio of loans out there and only still have so much gold. So they could start to put in, maybe they can actually give out about 10 times as many in loans as they actually have in gold, because people aren't running to go get this gold out all the time. There's some, like, this human behavior. They could issue these pieces of paper that gave you access. And and so that was kind of the beginning, maybe, of our current banking system, and a little bit of how derivatives work is this idea that people don't need access to those assets in actuality, and we're willing to do transactions and perform services on this faith-based currency of I have a piece of paper, and that I'll take your piece of paper. And I really don't actually need gold that often. In fact, gold is actually cumbersome to deal with. So you start there, and then you get into this place where, okay, well, we can kind of go higher and higher, and how much gold do we actually need to have to issue credit? And then associated with that is the consequences? That's what they call a bank run. Is that, well, what starts happening if things start to slow down or people start to get nervous, and then everybody wants to go and I say, you know what, I'd rather just have most of my gold buried in my ground now. I'm just not trusting where things are going. So I go and I want to take my gold, but then, you go and you say, I also want to get my gold. I don't like where things, and then Devin goes, right? Well, all of a sudden we call that a bank run. We all want to go get our gold out, and the bank doesn't have enough gold to give out to us because they loaned it out to everybody else at a much higher rate.
My favorite depiction of that, I would have to say, is It's a Wonderful Life, which I'm sure you've seen, right, Kyle?
Yeah.
Have you seen that, Farzan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in It's a Wonderful Life, that whole, even as a kid, because I was probably one of the first movies that I saw that showed me this crisis in action. All these people are rushing and need their money, but they don't have it. Like you give him he starts giving him his own money because it's he's supposed to be this good guy, right? But it's insane. And then of course the evil banker, which everyone knows. It's so weird how that movie is just so timeless. Like it really is. Like just thinking about it. But on a separate topic that I was thinking about, the first episode of season 2 in Dirty Money, they actually talk about Wells Fargo, which I didn't even know this was happening. I don't bank at Wells Fargo, but apparently they had been caught basically forcing, or if not coercing their bankers to just fib and create as many accounts as possible to meet a quota, because it doesn't matter about, whether or not the people are real, or if they really wanted a credit card, they needed as many accounts as possible by the end of the day, every day. So it was just insane, like hearing about that. And it was called cross-selling, which was new to me. Every time I talk about, or I learn anything about financials, it's kind of fun because there's always some new word that I've never heard of. And they say that in The Big Short, in one of the opening, I think it's Ryan Gosling is narrating, and he's saying something about, oh, you probably never heard of that. Well, you're not supposed to. Like, you're not supposed to know any of this stuff because that's, they don't want you to have the money, right?
Devin, this is interesting. And like going back to Kyle and his explanation about, backing the money with the gold. So it's kind of like right now, what is my backup like in the bank? They issue a credit card for you and they tell you, hey, you have 20,000 credits, but I don't have the equal amount of gold in the bank, right? So they gave me that credit card, and the backup is my credit score, which is a made-up number based on some, algorithm they have.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's your goal. That does not exist.
Yeah, and I'd like to mention it. Kyle had recommended this video that I was just playing in the background a moment ago. The economics, the basics of economics. I forget the name of the video already off the top of my head. What was it? It was
how the economic machine works.
That's right.
Yeah.
How the economic machine works.
Yeah, it's a simple 30-minute animation by Ray Dalio. He's a world-class investor, one of these really rational people.
Yeah.
And the voice of reason is just not very well admired right now. This is the environment, so especially in finances, I think.
Yeah.
Most of all, but it's a really cool. I think it does a good job. It has to simplify some variables that are in there, but I think it does a good job kind of conveying like, oh, this is the system a little bit. It's kind of how the economy works. And it's easy to get onto tangents on this topic because there's so much, and especially that question, what is a derivative? I think it underlies the fact like it's intended to be obscure, and it sometimes doesn't relate to anything, but just to circle back to what I was saying, we actually, I think it was in the 40s, it was mid 19th century, but we got off of the gold standard. So as much as it almost used to have, at least there was some realistic component to what we do with finances and how this fiat currency exchange works. Before there was some ratio that had to be maintained. That's no longer the case. We are now in a non-gold standard era, and so what even is finances? And it's almost like this manna from heaven. It can be very intangible. And then just the last thing I want to say here, that I'll try to pause for a second, but you talked about credit cards and we talked about loans, right? Banks giving loans, and I wanted to address one of the incorrect notions that I held for a long time, which is, okay, so even if we don't have gold, so what's the basis of money? Well, we know that the United States government, at least in terms of the United States currency, that they print currency. So that's the origin of money, right? We print so much currency, and that's how it gets out there. And I found out that was wholly incorrect. That has not been how we create money for a very long time, and it goes back to the banking situation, really, that I described before. Money is created through debt. So the moment that a bank issues a loan, we have now introduced new money into the system. That money didn't exist before, and now it does. And so every time someone gets a mortgage or takes a credit card and takes credit on their loan, gets a car loan, gets a student loan, we've introduced new money into this big sphere of money. It's just grown bigger. The balloon has gotten bigger.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of consequences to that, one of which is that we try to be a debt-driven society.
Kyle, can I stop you, ask you for a
Yeah,
second?
please.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. In most countries, and I guess the United States included, when we print money, and you just mentioned that you explained how we create money or make money out of nothing, actually. So, but in most countries, when they print money, and it used to be like that, like you mentioned in the US, we had to back that money with the gold. So, but we are not doing that anymore, at least in the United States, right?
Right. Yeah. No, we don't back it with gold. And so what do we back it with is the question. And so they're still do, because we do create, and that's how money's created. Like you said, really out of thin air. We write something on a piece of paper. I bring maybe, $10,000 I've saved, working and saving. And I have $10,000 I'm ready to buy a house. And they say, okay, cool. Well, you're kind of here and this is where you're at, but we're willing to give you some amount of money and, $200,000 maybe or whatever. Yeah. And now you can go and buy your house. Okay. So now we just generated just like out of thin air, $190,000 into the economy, just like that. Now, some of that's going to go back to banks because they probably owned a mortgage on the house, that I just bought. So that pays back their loan. But we've also, because of the way the housing market works and this like ever increasing valuation of property, we've also managed to pay some contractors and builders and some people who own the house, and they have money to go, do the same thing with. They take their gain, okay, cool, I made 30 on that. I take 30, I go to the bank and they give me a loan for 400,000. So it just blows up real fast, but it's likened to just someone taking a helicopter and just dropping money.
Right. Oh, I just had that was good. I think Discord just died. One moment, please.
Laterals is, well, they come and they assess the house and they say, how much do you think this can?
Sorry to cut you off. Discord had just crashed for just a moment there. Sorry about that. Yeah. I was looking at it, I'm like, huh, that's good. Let's cut off Kyle right when he's in the middle of explaining something.
Yeah.
I think it's still screwed up though. Give me one moment here.
I see the
I think we are still streaming, Devin, huh? But the
video. I think it just totally decided to tank. There we go. All right. Sorry about that.
You're fine. Yeah.
Okay. That was good times. I mean, it's
that
not.
Was
it's not
Discord crisis.
yeah, I was gonna say it's not a stream unless we have issues. Really, I mean, so on a different note, I was trying to remember. So I was trying to say so that in a similar vein, Wells Fargo, they were caught doing this cross selling thing, which, like you were saying, you're not just getting a savings account. You're getting a credit card, a mortgage, a car loan, and it's all through Wells Fargo. They've created a way that banking can become a product, and they got good at it. They became one of the biggest banks in the world, which is just crazy. International millions of customers, or just numbers basically, because they just kept adding more and more. But like you were saying, this whole thing, the money, like I think that video that you showed us, the economics machine, it shows this animation pretty clearly. It's credit outweighing money, like what's the difference at that rate, and when can they decide to print money? It's just really interesting. But that Wells Fargo episode I highly recommend, because it was just like really eye opening to see that kind of stuff was happening, and I didn't even know.
So Devin, I think, like you mentioned, like the credit outweighs the money. I think it's actually debt that outweighs the money, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, they have the scale. Yeah.
So I was, like Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong. Like if all of us decide to go to the bank and took out the money, the number that we have on a piece of paper, I don't think we have enough money. Right? The actual money is just a number.
Yeah, it's very digital. So now we've gone into this place where it used to just be gold, right? It used to actually be silver coins and gold or beads. I mean, we had to actually have those physically. And then we went to this gold-based standard of paper, notes. And then we went from that to a not gold-based standard of notes, and now we're into not even a paper-based. Everything is binary, instant transactions, and then back to the question of derivatives. My understanding, I've seen these statistics, but if there's, I don't know the exact numbers, so I'll be wrong here. But if I was going to say if there's $5 trillion, right, or some amount of it, that's the amount of money that sort of exists right now, $5 trillion. Derivatives and the kinds of bets that are being that are out there, these transactions that are out there. They represent something like $50 trillion, and so not only is the $1 trillion not really non-existent to begin with, but then you have these derivatives, these derivative contracts, and then we say, well, it's okay because they offset each other, right? So I place a bet that says I think Tesla's going to go up to $2,000, and at the same time I say I also think it's going to go down 500. They call this. It's to try to offset your losses there, basically. So when they say, well, if you look at that, then these $50 trillion, it's actually, it's not that bad because there's a lot of this mitigating circumstances. They try to offset their own bets. And it's like, I don't know, because I'm such a pragmatic person. Like I try to understand it. I try to use it. I game the system. I use credit card bonuses all the time. They give me money, I mean, it's all thin air, but yeah.
I was say you should tell Farzan about this, but you can finish the topic. But I know tangent after tangent, but Farzan, he actually has a pretty good story about that. So
I got a whole system, yeah. So I try to understand it. But I'm also very practical, so I try to balance this in my life because it's it evokes a lot of anxiety in me when I see how intangible it is and the way people treat it so intangibly. But I've come from a place where I had, almost less than nothing at a certain point, and it was very tangible. I mean, when you're getting booted out of the place you're renting and stuff, it's incredibly tangible. So I'm not so divorced from reality that I don't think that we just keep surfing this and it's just like going to get better and better and better all the time. Like there's real there's real issues, and there's people who have to they have to make rent. I mean, you can't just have your multiplex is going up in value 10% every year. Like, you can't charge people 10% more rent every year. So these are concerns I have, and that's why I can relate to these people in The Big Short, because you watch this and it's like, don't people realize this is unsustainable? We can't just keep doing this, or else we have to pay everybody, this much more every year, and then it just doesn't even mean anything, right? If everything always costs that much more, and then you just make that much more, it's like we're just chasing our own tail all the time. So it can be very exhausting. Yeah, sits very poorly in me.
Yeah. So Kyle, it's just to me, because I was born and grew up in Iran. When I came here, it was interesting to me that, so I have, like, for example, 500 in the bank account, but they gave me a credit card for 5,000, and now I could use that. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And I had a really bad feeling about using credit cards. Like, I used to always have actual money, like notes, in my pocket, and now I had 2 pieces of plastics in my pocket. That worth more than whatever I had before, right? And it scares me a lot to, oh my God, so now I can, go and buy whatever I want, basically. But, me, being a very cautious person, and we had our own, business and know how to, work with the money. I just want to give you, and everybody who's, listening to this or watching this later, like in Iran, for example, we don't have such the concept of credit score, and it's really hard to take out loan, especially for buying houses. So, for example, if you have a business or something and you are working, so you save up your money, and then you are going and buying this house, for example, for 200K, right? So you saved up 100K. And you give the 100K, or maybe you saved up the whole, you have 200K saved up, you buy it in cash. I mean, it's happening here in the US as well, right? But if you don't have the full money, you go to the bank and they want a cosigner. And those cosigners should be government employees, because those have the most secure jobs in the country. So
interesting.
And because it is a government employee, if you can't pay your payment, make your payment, they take out that payment out of their paycheck even before they're receiving their paycheck, because they are so it's really hard, and you have to have these at least 2 cosigners. Or, for example, we had our own business, so we owned the store. And so that was used as an asset, to give us money. But if you don't have a store, you have to find, some, at least 1 or 2 that works for the government that can co-sign your loan. Yeah, it's really hard, but I mean, we never had housing prices, right?
Yeah, So and there is, from the converse side of me, right, I'm just looking at systems. I can see where that we wouldn't be able to just like switch over and go back to that. But also there's some disadvantages to one like that, right? This ability for us to create credit out of thin air means that we can really stimulate a lot of economic activity. We can stimulate a lot of people doing stuff and maybe failing. I mean, there's a lot of failures. There's a lot of bankruptcies. I mean, people go insolvent, and that just means, hey, I can't pay people. And they go, oh, and then you file for bankruptcy, and they say, sorry, you can't get your money from this guy. He can't pay you. It's like, what, right? This is built into the system. And it can be very mind-boggling for the accountant-oriented person. You were talking about the contrast, though, of going from cash-based operations to credit-based operations. I think that's my practical side. That's really how I've always used it. And now that because I've done that, I've had credit cards, and I have a lot of credit cards now because they give me bonuses. They give me free money for getting the credit card, but it's not actually free money if I pay them interest, which means if I take the loan and I pay minimum payments or whatever, then I end up paying them quite a lot of money. And
yeah.
so that's the incentive, but they're trying to trap me in there and say, oh, hey, we'll give you some free money, you know, because that is a very common mentality, especially in the United States. But it's also a big trap because, and this is the thing people don't realize, you know, a credit card right now often has at least 20, maybe 30% interest rate.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, okay. But people just aren't math oriented. So it's just, it means what it means. I don't know. I pay $30 a month, and what it means is if you went and spent $1,000 on something right now because you want it right now, and you don't pay it off right now, you pay it off over minimum payments over the course of time, you're going to be giving the credit. You're basically burning $300 a year, lighting it on fire. And then you at best you might pay them $1,300. You might end up paying $2,000 for that thing that you wanted that was $1,000. Meanwhile, I'm on this other side. I pay, you know, I started at the bottom, but I also only took what I could get. Right? If I could afford, then I would get that thing. I didn't get this thing thinking, I'll pay that off. I just never did that. And you build up, and it's slow, but it's real, and it's practical, and it's stable. And then as you get along, you find that you've done okay, and you've managed your budget, and you know you get those skills like you picked up there managing your store and things, you know. So then time goes on, then people start wanting to give you money, or they say, hey, how about you just spend money on this card and we'll just pay you 2%. Just have 2% every time you go to the grocery store. Everything costs you less. And then on the other side, there's if I was in the mentality that I was paying minimum payments, it would cost me far more, you know, all those same things. So that's what I mean when I say that, you know, I look at the system, I have a lot of anxiety about it, but I also try to look at, you know, I'm just one drop in the bucket. I can't change the way that people are going to operate, but I try to look at the rules and I say, okay, there they are. How do I use them? And how do I carve out my little space in this thing in a way that feels manageable to me, that I don't feel over leveraged? You know, I value sleep, you know.
That's a key word, you know, manageable. Like you have to be able to manage it. Otherwise, you are getting yourself into the vicious cycle. You know, you're taking out more loans, you're using more credit on top of the credit. And this is a vicious cycle that most of the people are not aware of it, and they're just like using it. Like I remember somebody told me like years ago, we were talking about like a travel or a trip to somewhere, and I was like, oh my god, that is so expensive. I don't have money to do that. And she was like telling me, oh, just use your credit card. And I was like, well, you have to pay it off, right?
That's funny because literally I was talking to Kyle about that one time. I mentioned specifically, I was like, oh, I wish I could have gone to Europe. I know a lot of people went to Europe after high school or after college. And I was like, but I never understood how they did that. I'm like, I don't have money for that. And Kyle's just like, credit cards. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. They gained a bunch of debt. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't do that. That's right. So
I know. You know, to me, don't get me wrong. Like to me, again, I'm on that. I like Kyle. I totally get your point. Yeah. I like the way the economy works better in the U.S. It enables people to spend more money and make more money out of nothing, right? But I'm on the kind of the mindset of if I want to, you know, use my credit card to, for example, like Devin said, go to Europe, at least I should have 20% of the cost in cash or saving. Then I take out the other 70-80% in credit card. Not 100% or 200% on credit card. I would never do that.
Well, and like Kyle was saying, you know, if you're gonna like he's been doing anyway, like if you're gonna get a credit card, be able to pay without accruing interest. Because if you get that interest, then you're just losing. You're not gaining anything. You're just paying them more money. So.
And with it too, it's also this recognition that that because this is how money is created, and because going back to like the housing crisis thing, they had this idea. You're talking about the cycle, and you get in this vicious cycle, and it's actually this strangely, like, we depend on this cycle. The economy kind of works well because people are freaked out all the time, and they're never able to pay. So it's like, you have to go to work, you have to get there. I mean, we're gonna take everything you have. You owe us everything, you know. And so, I get another card, and then they get locked in. And then we have this weird, like, materialist, like, everyone's posting pictures of all the stuff they get, and it's like, man, I mean, you guys just, like, everyone just settle down. You know, you're all kind of miserable, right? I always think about, I often tell this to Devin. It's like, okay, so I can go and use my credit card and get all kinds of stuff, and I'll probably feel good for about 5 minutes, but like, when I had, you know, at some of my most simple times, I have been at least as happy on many of those days as I've ever been. Now that I have a very nice, manageable amount of, you know, of assets and resources, and I've accrued that little by little. But I can tell you, I'm not like happier. I'm not like blissfully happier. Yeah. You can only squeeze so much happiness out of a moment, and I think that's a skill we have to learn intrinsically. How do I enjoy this moment and feel at peace and feel grateful for the things I have? Because at any point I've ever been on, I'm always thinking how I could have more, you know, and reaching certain milestones in terms of business operations that I thought, oh man, if I hit that, I'll do it. And it's like, as it turns out, every single year my property taxes go up. Every single year my sewer and trash goes up. Every single, you know, all these costs go up, and your responsibilities accrue as well. And so this is another reason why I think that that using credit cards in a manageable way, everybody advises it, but at the same time, the system kind of depends on people to not do it very well. And
so Kyle, let me ask you this. I just think that Devin, I have to leave in 5 minutes. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so so I gotta go eat. Let me ask you this: you just hit the nail in the head talking about happiness. Let me ask you this $1 million question: do you think money equals happiness?
I think systematically, I think money is actually probably a bigger source of misery for people in general. I think it equals prosperity. I think it leads to prosperity. I think that it allows for us to have technological achievements that you know. I mean, I often say, hey, you know, at a time when I had, again, almost nothing. I mean, there was a time when we literally had $5 a day, and between Kayla and myself, and we would go to Winco and get enough food for dinner and into the next day and the next day, and we walk in the snow to go get this stuff, come back home, and it was great. I mean, you know, it wasn't great, but it was great. I mean, we were happy, but in that moment, I would always say to her, we are eating the kinds of the fruits and vegetation in the middle of December in Boise, Idaho, the kings of the past did not have access to: mangoes, oranges, lemons, the whole array of fruits. And so this is prosperity, and it's one of the amazing achievements that fiat currency allows us to have. But we are also so susceptible to this, like to envy and to all these negative influences that people have so much, you know. Again, we also had hot water. I mean, hot water is a relatively new indoor plumbing, you know. So, but so we've got all those things, but you get used to it, right? This is just background noise, and like, well, what's some new thing I can have that is that I can, again, now we have this social media. We don't even talk to each other. I don't even get to brag about stuff to people in person now because no one talks in person. So instead we got to do this thing. And it's this weird, like avatars. It's like we're all like avatars of real selves. But, you know, going back to that happiness thing, not only is there so much happiness you can squeeze out of a moment, there's also so much I can physically do in 24 hours. And I got to sleep for at least 8 of them, maybe 9 or 10. I don't know. But, you know, so there's only so much I can do. So, you know, and I find that as I get in and actually say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. It's like, I don't even have time to, you know, go blow a bunch of money on stuff. And this is how for me, I've managed to slowly, it's like, I always kind of know where I'm at. I know what I got to work on, and I just try to take joy in it. And you find that, and then you look up after another few months and you're like, oh, I saved some money. I didn't hit any major emergencies. And that's one of the big things of saving allows us, is that we can go through and just be able to afford things that make sense to us and feel okay, and not have to worry as much. But to go back to your question, does money equate to happiness? I think systematically, because of the way that this thing is always chasing up and up and up, I think it actually creates a lot of apprehension in a lot of people for the most part. And it makes it very difficult sometimes for us to actually enjoy the moment, because we can be very future minded and very, 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 everything's socially relative. And there's just always more, right? It's like, there's no matter where you're at. I mean, there's just always more because of its intangible nature. And these are some elements of it. I just don't think we've matured as a society, or as a species, or as a civilization to try to, you know, we're working on it maybe, but I think we get distracted. And then the last thing I'll say before you go is you talk the distinction between like the Iran economy and the United States economy. And I do think there's opportunities in this American system. But one of the caveats to that is things like a business cycle where everything seems to be going well, and then boom, and then we have, you know, a recession or a depression, or just the risk of it. It's like always looming for people. And because everything can be so debt oriented, and I think that's one of the elements of the economic machine, is that whatever way the momentum is going is also, if that momentum turns, and all of a sudden the banks say, hey, you know what, we don't want to give out loans as much. It's starting to look a little risky. Well, if I can't get a loan, I need that loan. That's how I'm going to pay my other loans, you know. So I'm in the cycle, right? You guys put me in the cycle. I put myself in the cycle, but I need that loan. And well, we can't give you any loans because it's starting to look risky, you know, or you don't have the collateral to do it, or things are starting to slow down. Well, they're slowing down because you're not giving loans, and I'm defaulting on my loans, which is making other loans not be able to give more loans, right? And so it can turn really quickly, and people can be hurting in that way. And at the end of and that's the weird divorciation from reality, because like there's still houses that needed painted during that time, and there's still, you know, there's still all these real things that needed to happen, but people didn't know, you know, there wasn't debt to dictate what people need to do, and so we lost order and we lost economic activity, and so it's very strange in that way. And I try to understand it, but frankly, it's quite elusive, and derivatives are a great example. It's like stuff made up on top of being made up on top of being made up, and it makes it hard to understand. Yeah.
Well, thanks. You know, it was really nice talking to you. You know, definitely, everybody likes money. You know, I have not yet to see somebody to say, "Oh, I hate money." Because if I see that person, I would take all of his money and leave him be happy without money. I would like to see that.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it was really nice talking to you. We should have you back, you know, talking about money and finance and stuff like that. It's always a interesting topic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that Kyle and I could keep going for a long time, I'm sure.
You guys keep going, and have a great night, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Farzan.
Yeah, we'll chat with you, Farzan.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, that was very Farzan. A lot of questions there, Devin. If you want to, I'm good to keep talking a little bit.
I definitely want to at least finish up the hour. I know, because we had a little bit of time there at the beginning, so I think we should at least go for a little bit longer. I was gonna say one of the things I wanted to bring up. Earlier this week, did you see the Tesla stock actually did take a huge hit, and everyone was freaking out about it?
Well, I mean, it makes sense. It's so overpriced. It's insane. Yeah. It's a really great example of and, you know, just how markets go, where And it bothers me because I look at stocks and I was hoping to, and maybe another time, I don't know. I wanted to talk about what the nature of the economy was and how the financial system works. But there's some practical tactics too that I think would be cool to convey, like what kind of stocks to look at. But yeah, as a person who does that and tries to take advantage of opportunities and look at things. I've looked at stocks. It's a really great way to, because I don't, if I take money, I put it under my mattress. That's the whole thing, right? This thing is always doing this, and my mattress money is just doing this. And so in 3 years, that money, that $100 or $10,000 or whatever is worth less in 3 years than it is today, as far as what I can buy with it. So, and that's again the other piece. And so it's this thing that incentivizes always reinvesting or taking new loans, and it's interesting. It's an interesting systematic thing, but follow the incentives. But part of that is that people just follow trends, and Tesla's a big trend. And I think that I admire the fact that they turned electric cars into a trend. I didn't understand it at first, but I respect now. When he first started, he was like, we're gonna make electric cars that have like gold plate. It wasn't literally gold plated, but it was like, diamond studded tires and stuff, right? Stuff that didn't even improve the car really in terms of functionality at all, but it improved this appeal. But what I started to realize is that if you want to sell something to people who have the kind of resources to spend $100,000 on a car, it needs to cost $100,000 because it's not cool enough, right? It doesn't speak to their status if it doesn't cost that much money. It's so. Meanwhile, I'm obviously a big fan of Nissan Leaf. That was a very affordable electric vehicle that went, maybe not quite as far, but it was, at a quarter of the cost. It was actually like less than many cars on the market. So you've got this two sides. But Tesla did this interesting thing. I didn't understand it, but it took me a while to digest that. Actually, if you want to sell something, if you want to sell a piece of wood to a guy with $1 million, then it needs to cost $100,000. Otherwise, it's not. It's not something he can brag about. He doesn't care.
I totally understand that. And Tesla has definitely created that product, like you said. An electric car doesn't need to cost that much, obviously. But then they put these fancy doors that open suicide. You just keep upping the price as much as you can. So.
And the rear view mirror has no rim. It's things like that it
has
it's cool. It's sharp looking. I'm not taking it away. It's sharp. But
is it like a 12-inch touchscreen, right, on the dashboard?
Yeah. They're
just full HD. Yeah.
It's like this car is bells and whistles. Also, we put an electric motor in it. Yeah, and it goes really far, but it's there's a lot of bells and whistles. It's just the default model. Anyway, Tesla did that, but he made it really popular. But the thing and so now everyone's like, oh, buy Tesla stock. But I've seen analyses. I own Tesla stock for a little bit, and then I made some money on it. I was like, I'm good. This thing's bouncing up and down. This is not something I'm holding on to. Had I held Elta, I would have made more money in the end. But it's just to me, it was too volatile. I didn't want to watch it anymore. But I've seen analyses, and this is the thing that I say: people we get divorced from reality based on this system of following. But I've seen some analyses that I find rational and reasonable, which says that, hey, where Tesla's at right now, and previously it was $1,000 a share, and then they did a 5-way split too. So that convolutes for people. It makes it more affordable, and then they just buy it. They're getting less of a share than they had before. But anyway, so at $1,000, they said, okay, so let's assume the electric car market goes like this. And let's assume that Tesla gets 50% of that market. And they make all these assumptions that are pretty generous to Tesla. And they say that we're giving this much market share. We'll assume people are going to buy, $40 billion of electric cars. And they say Tesla's price to earnings still would not make sense in 2030 with what we're currently pricing it at. Tesla could grow like this for the next 10 years, and it still won't make sense in terms of normal stock valuations at 1,000, and it kept going up from there. So yeah, I'm pretty critical of
and
the
what's
reasoning involved.
I didn't actually know this part. I was just curious because I wanted to look it up again. But apparently they got the snub from the S&P 500, which caused the initial kind of shock and awe because that was September 4th.
Yeah, okay.
So
that makes sense.
They've lost a bit of value just in that because people are probably afraid, because it's still shaky ground, I guess. But and I was trying to tell Anthony about this because he's been trying to get into stocks too. But this is a good example of I don't know what the word is, but basically. It's too fanciful. It's the stock that everyone wants, but they don't really have a good reason to want it. It seems like it's just
it's speculative. It's speculative investing.
Speculative is the word.
And don't get me wrong. Like I said, I could have stayed in, and I would have tripled my money, even where it's at now. It still doesn't make it. It's not rational. Had I done that, it's not like it was only on an upswing. And there's no reason someone couldn't buy a Tesla now and double their money by a year from now. The way that this thing's going, it doesn't make sense. It may not stick to making sense. That there are plenty of stocks that do that. I find them less appealing. I feel much better about my decision because these things do this,
Right.
And if you watch it, if you pay attention to it, if you have expectations, what it's going to do. The reason why I stay away from Tesla is because this thing could double, and it always feels like, man, I missed out. I mean, I could have done that, but because of the way it's valued right now, and it's very trendy, just like that, people were thinking, well, if we get exposure to the S&P 500, then we've got this index fund, and that means money is passively going to be coming at this stock because people who buy into things that buy the S&P 500 by default are buying Tesla, which drives up the stock price. So if they didn't get access to that, then that means people actually have to go physically buy actual Tesla stock because they intentionally want to buy Tesla stock, and it's less able to sort of ride this. Oh. But it might get back on there. I mean, a no today isn't translated into a no 6 months from now. But either way, the point is that to me, it's already overvalued, and for that reason, this thing could just as easily go boom, and all of a sudden everyone goes, you know what? And whereas you look at something like, I think you talked about, Anthony bought AMD. They made this fantastic processor, and all of a sudden they're taking over bigger market share, and they're a little pricey kind of for their income right now, but this was a stock that was, I think like 1/10 of what it is just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because they totally remodeled their whole business structure. And also we're looking at a time where cloud computing is huge anyway. Plus we've gone into this sort of social isolation environment. And so those are looking at real factors. And we say, it might be a little overpriced compared to, say, 3M, which makes industrial products, and there's just kind of a stable company, But here's a company, AMD, that was really innovative, and they've got the opportunity to capitalize on a bigger market share than they had before in a growing industry, and also when it comes down to it, Anthony understands the process. He understands the specs. It's something he understood, and it appeals to him because he likes the product, and I think that's a really great way to do it. And I think that's one of the values Tesla has. People they like the image of it, at least, and they like it's picked up in fad. And so regardless of the stock price and how I feel about it, I still feel like that was a huge success on the part of the company and the part of their CEO to actually change the world's perspective through what were grossly overpriced vehicles, and this narrative.
He made, the Corvette of electric cars without ever having any backing other than, obviously, I mean, okay, so he helped create PayPal, but I mean, he never made cars. Like, how do you just go into an industry and be like, I'm going to make a car that's going to sell well. It's crazy. Like, you can't predict
And
that
he
kind
does
of
this,
stuff.
and I've described him, and I've had to also appreciate that. Like, here's someone who pretty much goes like balls to the wall on his leveraging and on
Absolutely.
his financial engineering and on his narrative. You know, he just says stuff, and it's like it doesn't have to be. I mean, it's not true. You know, it's not factual, a lot of it, but it's kind of like there's only if you actually want to change people that quickly, that's how you have to talk, and you have to throw that much money at it. You have to figure out ways to throw money at it. And there's someone who who knew how to get access to capital and constantly comes up with new ways. Well, we'll pre-release the truck, and you guys can spend $100 on the truck or something, right?
Yeah.
And then you get 1,000 orders for this truck that we may end up having to refund, but that if they get to go and put that on the books, it's possibly $10 billion of future profit. And then they turn around, go to the bank and say, hey, we've got 10,000 pre-orders for this truck. That's $10 billion of revenue. And then we'll take a loan out today to go build a gigafactory so we can start building these trucks or something else, and they do those kinds of maneuvers based on, again, this debt system. And so there's whatever people have to say about how they do things or how Elon Musk thinks, he certainly understands that money's made up, but you can do real things with it. And I think he does both of those things. I think he makes stuff up and does things with it, that are real and will have real implications. And if he goes, if his company goes bankrupt doing it, well, that's why you create a corporation.
I was going to say
their liability.
I was actually curious. As of April 1st, 2020, they said 622,000 people had pre-ordered as of March 31st. But I don't see a more recent. Okay, here, June 22nd, 650,000. That's crazy that many people are like, sure. Like I'll throw some money. Like it's not even really guaranteed, but there's this idea of, it's almost like he's created this idea of, you're kickstarting this, you're part of something, but it's like you're buying a car. Like, it's funny to me, but it's he's selling not only the car but an ideology, and that's really what it is at this point. Is people believe in Tesla, Or
the other thing too is, I think that he gets to sell them a little bit of identity too.
Oh yeah,
it says,
absolutely.
hey, for $100 you get to go around telling everybody you pre-ordered a Tesla. And it's like, yeah, you know what? I'm constantly starving for, like, what's my next thing that I get to talk about, right? that I get to show people. Yeah. What's my next sheepskin I can put on the wall? And here's a cheap one.
People still put
$100 and I get to go tell everybody. And then I can get it back. It's not even like if I decide to cancel it, they refund me the money. So it's really just in a holding pattern over there.
It's funny.
And
I was gonna say, don't get me wrong. I actually personally had thought about, maybe that is a good idea, because the lowest end model, I believe, was like 39,000, and I was like in my head weighing like, that'd be cool, have a new car. But then I like snapped back to reality. I was like, I have a car that works. Let's be realistic. I don't need.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's immune from it. We're all like sort of fantasize about how cool it would be, and like wouldn't people think that's kind of cool? Like, if I had that, you have to be honest with yourself.
Absolutely.
If you're gonna mitigate the force of it, right? You have to like recognize that it's in there, and and you spend a little bit of time, maybe a couple hours, and then you kind of maybe wake up the next day and be like, that has like no actual application in my life right now. Like, I have like real things I got to do today, and whatever it was I was thinking yesterday, like, might be cool, like in some time from now, but it doesn't change my present reality, And so,
right.
but that's not everybody comes to that conclusion. So $100 for a Tesla, yeah, that's a good brag. That's a solid brag, and it can go do real things with that money. So. Right. And not just the money. I mean, 630,000. So that's still $60 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a huge amount. Which is a good amount of money. They don't actually get to use it, kind of, because they have to be ready to pay it back. But the thing is, what it does is that it marks it for even, $60 million towards, again, I'd say is at least in the figure of 10 billion of revenue. And that's what they get to go and say, hey, this is what we have, so give us that loan and we can actualize this. We can turn this into reality. And that is what's interesting and cool about a debt driven society.
Yeah, and I'm no stranger to this idea either of kickstarting. I've invested money into indie projects on Kickstarter.com. I don't know if you've ever looked on there or used it before, but there's all kinds of stuff that you can support just out of your own pocket. It's this idea of our society. It's a realization of, I don't need to get a loan anymore. I can ask everyone around me. I can ask my fans, like depending on who it is. Like I just recently kickstarted an animation by a YouTuber that I like, Meat Canyon, which he makes really funny kind of adult humor animation, and he's making a full season. I was like, oh, that's cool. You kind of support an artist, but it's also kind of funny because it's one of those things that the loan is us. We're loaning him money to make something.
Yeah, we're capital. Yeah, we get to be capital investors, and the return on it is the product or feeling like we contributed to something that's good. This is why I like investment advice that tries to, and I think Tesla falls in this category, which is why it's like I can't put a price on that. I can't put it in the same category as a price to earnings ratio of something else as well, because it has this sentimental value, it has an ideological value, and those are fantastic. They have a lot of value to society, and I think people should put their money towards something they believe in, because it can be so volatile that if it ends up, because the market swings this way and that way, that at least we get to tell ourselves, but I picked something that was meaningful to me, and that I can feel better about that decision, either way.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I think there's a good reason, for that.
Especially considering it's not in that regard. If you actually believe in it, then you're not throwing away money. It's not just some blanket stock that you got recommended because it makes money. It's like, right. I actually support this company and what they stand for.
And you still own. I mean, you own some. You actually own a portion of that company, and unless they go insolvent and they're just null. But you do actually get to say, I'm a member. And you can vote. They send you voting. You get to vote on the board members and stuff, and
that's interesting.
So you get to participate, in that fashion. And
have you had to do that at all? Like the voting?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I do. I usually one of the things I just blanket do is I always reject the increase in executive pay.
Doing your part.
Almost. I think there was one instance where I didn't, but like for the most part, I'm always like, I look at it, I'm like, $11 million a year. That's too much, So I just blanket say no. Or I just say, you just don't need to go up. Not in a time when one of the rounds of voting we got was, I think, around April or something, and there's like employment was just skyrocketing, right? And I'm like, in this atmosphere, there's no way I can say, go, I'm going to approve you to have more money this upcoming year. Well, we don't even know what the end of the year is going to look like, So that was, now it doesn't mean anything because I think 78% of the shareholders are like huge money market managing firms and stuff, that they're going to decide, how it goes.
I'm certain,
but yeah.
I'll say I'm certainly of the mind to kind of disagree with giving so much money to these types of people. Anyway, it's just like it like that. I keep going back to this episode of Dirty Money, but it's just so compelling to watch all these people talk about it. But the CEO of Wells Fargo at the time was making, I think, like $30 million or something like that. I was just like, for what? He basically became the mascot of the company, going to all these different TV shows, going on the Kramer or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. What's it? Fox News, not Fox News, but the Jim Cramer show or whatever. The Money Watch or whatever. he would go on there and the guy would treat him like a rock star. And I thought that was just super creepy. Like, it's like, dude, he works for a bank. Like, I get it. You like money. Like, I don't know. It's just really weird to me. But definitely these types of people, they're not, other than answering to shareholders, I mean, what do they really need all that money for? You know, it's insane because they're just getting money from these people who are investing in the company. That's really what it comes down to, is they're just getting more and more money because they're doing what their shareholders told them to do. It's just really weird. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of leverage, there's a
yeah.
lot of because individuals, I certainly that's kind of how this corporate America, we're very tied into corporate America and debt driven America, and but corporate America allows us to take debts because I certainly don't want to go put all my hard-earned assets on the line if I want to start a business. But if I can build up enough reputation and I have an LLC or a corporation, at some point I can have the corporation take out a loan, and I'm immune. If that corporation goes bankrupt, they don't get to come after my house. And then with that loan, I can pay myself, and there's this weird transfer of the assets because, I mean, you have to do it in a responsible way because you're right, but that can happen where it's like you don't have to really.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say someone in the chat said also untaxed as well. LOL. And I think they're referring to just like the bonuses or 30. Yeah, I know that too. A lot of these guys, these executives, they're making a ton of money and they're getting tax breaks. Like, it's crazy. Like, what kind of a weird society, Like,
yeah, but the other thing though about it's Warren Buffett always says follow the incentives. So where are the incentives? So if we have tax laws that are going to allow you to keep more money in one way or the other, follow the incentive. Everybody who can is gonna utilize it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
There's a lot of tax things I started like nothing. I think my first year, a few years in business, I didn't even file taxes because I didn't make enough money for it to even matter. But my first year, I actually said, "Hey, I made money this year. My total gross income for the year was like $4,600, right? So a few $100 a month, maybe $400 a month, but through that process, I mean, I could go line by line. My taxes were very simple at that time, and they've since increased in complexity. But because I actually go through the law, sort of, or the forms, I see this thing. I go, oh, I can get a tax credit if I get insulated windows, Energy Star windows on my house. And so, okay, well, I don't think I can use that right now, and I'm probably not next year. But I file it away in my brain. I'm like, oh, I can do that. I get electric car, they'll pay me some amount of money to do that. Or I get solar panels, or if I start this account, I can defer this money. And so, through an organic process of doing these forms little by little, I have learned a lot of opportunities in which I don't have to pay as much taxes. And of course, I'm going to take advantage of every legal opportunity that I can to do that. And for that reason, I understand that anybody who has the resources to do what they can they need to do it, because you're talking sometimes 10% or 30%. I mean, big amounts of money that people can save if they do certain behaviors. Some of those behaviors, like having offshore accounts and not accounting for things, obviously are less scrupulous than others, and I think that there's some effort to try to address that. There are a lot of there's a lot of incentives in the tax law.
Yeah, I definitely feel like obviously being sort of at the bottom, like we're not at the bottom. I just mean, we're not an executive. I think it's fun to kind of like be mad, that these guys make so much money and then they don't pay as much taxes. But I completely agree. Like, if they're going to find a loophole or whatever tax credit, they're going to do it. And I understand that, once you've acquired wealth, you don't want to lose wealth. And that's really what it comes down to. It's like, it's definitely a cycle, but it's really weird. It's just weird to think about those kind of numbers, just existing in general. Like, it's insane. But
So the guy who's in The Big Short, Steve Carell plays in the real life. In the movie, his name is Mark Baum, but in real life, it's actually based on a guy named Steve Eisman.
Okay.
I've seen some other things that he's done, and one of the things he came from was he really looks at the banking industry, and that was one of the angles that he took his analytical approach about when he shorted the housing market, was looking at the bank industry and how leveraged they were, how much they were giving out loans, and how much they were even taking loans and creating loans based on the actual assets they had on the book. And he saw that it was just getting bigger and bigger. I mean, it's like go big or stay home every year, and so he talks about going to these CEOs and saying, like, this is insanity. You can't. I mean, this doesn't make sense. Like, you understand that, right? Because but one of the things they were coming at him with was, I made more money, I've made more money every year over the last 5 years, and I made $50 million last year. How much did you make? And so they totally disregard, like, whatever you think is reasonable doesn't apply in this office. I mean, I made $50 million a year last year, and I'm going for 60 this year because the guy over at Chase has just, made 55, and that pisses me off. And so it's like at that level, it's like, yeah, what are you even going to
it doesn't even mean anything. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all incentivized. But one of the he's proud of this phrase that he coined. He says, they mistook leverage for genius. And this was one of the Achilles heels of what happened, is that the banking industry, it's not like this caught them off. I mean, it kind of caught them off guard, but they, everyone was being like wantonly stupid, because everybody else was, and this was one of the things that I wanted to mention, is that I'm becoming a little unsettled a little bit again as I look at the housing market and where loans are getting to, as I look around today, and in the kind of way that makes me feel unsettled. I talked about. We're seeing 10% increase on home prices, for the last 10 years or so, every year.
Especially
incomes aren't going up 10% a year. Yeah.
I'll say, especially just even, I mean, right in our neck of the woods, we see it every day. We hear about it. People complaining about housing prices. Boise, Idaho has just completely skyrocketed for pricing on houses. When I first got this house, I thought it was I was like, okay, that's probably my limit. But now it's worth like 100,000 more. It's like, out of what? Like, based on what? Like, what improvements? Like, nothing. Like, it's the same house. It's kind of funny to me, this whole idea of, a house exists in this area that is just booming, so therefore, it's worth this much more because we say so. Like, it's another one of those things of making money out of air, it's just kind of
making money out of air. And it's also this cycle, because so one of the things that the system would, benefit from, whether it doesn't necessarily benefit you, but one of the things that we try to incentivize is this idea that, hey, your house is worth $100,000 more than it was when you first bought it. So you could sell your house, but if you sold your house and you tried to go buy another house that was basically the same, same area of town, same, similar configuration, similar level of updates and stuff, you wouldn't like have more money. You would have, you'd have to spend about the same amount of money to get that other house, right? So you don't come away with more cash in that. You actually come away with less cash because you have to pay a realtor and you got to pay a new loan transaction and stuff, So you can't just like, oh, sweet, so I can take this money and then have, more money, but also still have a house. Not really. You can't really do that, but you can take that extra money and go get a bigger loan and get a bigger house, maybe in a newer house, with a door that says, welcome home, Master Devin, or whatever other trinkety stuff they're throwing at people, and you can do that. and then that improves the value of those houses because you're one more person with cash ready to buy. Of course, your loan's bigger, and and but that's the way the incentivization works. And then we try to, of course, compel people through images and through sort of feeling a little bit of self-loathing, right? Like you're not important unless you have this new stuff,
or my stuff isn't good enough. Yeah.
Right, to go do that. But then the consequence of that, obviously, is I always think about, they say, oh, hey, yeah, we bought this modest townhouse kind of at the bottom, towards the bottom of the recession, and it needed a lot of work. So it was, it was incredibly inexpensive. But for us, it was just, that's what I felt comfortable with, And when we did, they were like, but you could afford so much more. I'm like, yeah, technically. Right, like according to your calculations, you're willing to give me a bigger loan, but like I don't want to be like at the edge of my like ongoing budget. I have no idea like if I'm gonna still be able to, work what I'm doing right now in 6 months or a year from now. Like
which they don't want to hear.
Yeah, and I wasn't ready to, and even if I was. Yeah. It seemed to me that the calculation meant that I would have to figure out not only how to keep making that money, but actually make more money because, again, property taxes are going to go up and everything's going to go up. And so if I'm already at the bleeding edge of what I can afford, and then just a couple of variables come my way, suddenly my problems just multiplied, big time in terms of a lot of things coming to a head. And I just didn't feel like I said, I had started from less than nothing and had all kinds of real consequences, through different actions that happened. I wasn't trying to, now that I maybe had made a little bit of headway and had a little momentum going, it just wasn't important to me to have some like physical representation of status or something that was like, I don't know, it's just it wasn't going to work for me. I wanted a place a little patch of land I could put some strawberries in the ground and do some work on the place. And I did do that. I just worked on it. I mean, we worked on that place all, just constantly and turned it into what I think was a pretty nice place. And then it turned out there was a little leverage action I could pull on that place, which was a whole other thing. But that's just how I approached that. It was this. I see what the system does. I see that there's all these opportunities there. I see people go big or stay home, and it works for them. And there's a lot of rewards for that risk-taking opportunity. But I also see it's like there's a lot of it that's really unnecessary. It's a lot for self-image. It just doesn't appeal to me in that way. I feel like I could spend my time. I like to make songs. I have this line in a song that says, I've got toys 8 ways to Sunday, but still you've caught me talking about someday. So it's like I have more than I can deal with it is.
Absolutely.
And I'll want more. I'm going to want more to do. And I want to achieve more things, But I also can recognize as soon as my mind starts creeping in that direction, it's like, dude, you got so much to do. And if you go get that new thing, this other stuff's just going to collect dust. That's my philosophy in the midst of all this chaos here, and I think it insulates me a little bit from this ups and downs. And
no, I think that honestly is a pretty good statement to end on. I think. Oh, I don't know. What do you think? Like everything you just said there. Yeah. It's something to live by. It's like just think about what you got, and think about what you don't really need necessarily. Like it's just one of those things. But certainly just talking about money in general is always just interesting to me, but also kind of worrying, like you were saying. You never really know what's going to happen. And I always think again of It's a Wonderful Life and how things can go bad, but in the end it still works out, So that's what I think of with money is things can go bad. And what's that? Oh, someone in the chat. To love and to live. Okay. Yes, exactly. I think that's Anthony's account. He said he changed his name. I'm pretty sure that's Anthony. I gave him a
It's probably like
mod.
you guys were talking about me, my AMD purchase.
That's right. AMD purchase.
Well, it was a smart move though, so I'm sure he's happy with that.
Well, yeah. Now with
but
Nvidia coming out with their graphics cards and everyone going crazy about it, and AMD surely will say something soon. Oh, Anthony's been watching the whole time. He says, "Nice. Well, thanks for joining
I actually
us."
own a little Nvidia, so yeah, I don't. I specifically. I also, this is the other thing, is I did look at a lot of stuff. I tracked it, and I've learned a fair bit. I've also learned from myself at this point, where I'm at with all of it, that I do better if I just set it and forget it. And that's why picking things that make sense to me for reasons that make sense to me works for me, because I don't have to like try to follow the crowd as much. Like I don't have to follow every news story and try to get out the second that there's a bad news and get back in if there's good news. Like it's exhausting, and I just have other stuff to do. I buy stuff like Nvidia. I think it's a good company. Google, Google's done me well. Things that I know and trust, and I think that they run their business as well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but generally they do okay over the long run.
Well, if you didn't know, they just released or announced their new graphics card series, the 30 series. So this month they're releasing the 3080, the 3070. I know those probably don't mean anything to you, but basically over the last year there was the 2080, the 2080 Ti, the 2070, and these are all high-end graphics cards that you put into a PC for gaming. And they had a new technology called RTX for shading, and just overall improved. Everything just looks more and more real every day, right? The 30 series is doubling down, of course, as they do, with technology. They'll take something that was already good, and then they'll guess what? 2 times is faster, or the graphics are better. Like that's basically it. And they'll keep doing that every year or two because it makes them money. And that's just how technology works. We're not limited by science necessarily in a lot of regards. We're limited by the fact that profit outweighs progress in some regard. When it comes to little things, I mean, graphics cards, I could see, but certainly with a lot of stuff, I definitely have seen that. Anthony says, basically companies that will keep growing, that is, Amazon and major tech companies. He said, like you were saying, in regards to Google.
Yep. Yeah, just they're run well. I think you have to look at business management and philosophy, and Tesla's like, again, they don't suit me because of their profit margins right now and even their potential ones, but they appeal to people. But I think that's somewhere in there. It's this idea that like when you buy a stock, you're buying into the future. I think that's a good philosophy. I think it's a heck of a lot better than a lot of the things people get up to, just miscreant behavior, to go.
Yeah.
And the list is so long, but when you buy a stock, you're buying into the future. You're buying into the idea that people out there are smart, trying to create something that other people might find appealing, and we hope that that's going to be a profitable endeavor in terms of just money, because it can be symbolic of success, but prosperity, mutual prosperity. We create new technologies. It makes things better. It's kind of cool. And money. Yeah.
I think if there was one stock that I would invest in, it doesn't exist yet because it's not publicly traded, but SpaceX, I think I would invest in, just because I believe in the idea of SpaceX, which is to just continue, because for a while there was no real space travel even happening anymore. And now, again, Elon Musk is like, hey, why not? Let's go to space. And then it happened, and he did it. And I've actually been watching it for quite a while, and I believe in it. I think we'll go to Mars with SpaceX. I really think we will. A lot of people are doubting it still, and I totally see it happening. I think it's awesome. So, I mean, as a kid, I would have been blown away by what SpaceX has done. So it's just like so cool to see it happen. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you there. If they had an IPO, I'd probably pay attention to it as a pretty long term. I'd be like, this is a long game for me, right? People buy into IPOs, and sometimes they can flip them and double their money in a day, or lose half of it in a day.
Well,
SpaceX, for that reason, that's a long game for me.
I think, and as soon as it's available, it's going to be the same situation. Elon Musk is just a rock star when it comes to getting people involved, so I'm excited for what's next. That's for sure. But anyway, I think we should end here. I appreciate you coming on though, and staying over the time frame. I know Farzan had to go get some dinner again, so.
Yeah, I was laughing about that. Well, you know me, obviously. I mean, I just it's so easy to get on tangents on this topic because it's a very convoluted and thing, but I think it affects us all. But I hope the main takeaway for anybody who's stuck with it at all, I do hope that there's some. It was a very big revelation to me to find out that money is created through debt. And it helped me sort of start to put the pieces into place of the way the incentives are driven, how much that they really like people to stay locked into debt, how that's an important component of it. But if you can rise above that and see it for what it is, understand debt, maybe choose to use it in ways, right? I mean, people often say, "Oh, you know, that's cool that you own that house." And I think the bank owns my house, but you know, I get to be the one responsible for paying them. But in any case, if you can see it for what it is and understand, you can't probably change the system, but you can use it and you can understand it if you can rise above it and not let them tell you how you're supposed to think about yourself or about your standing, and look at what you have, be grateful for what you have, manage it well, that you actually start to come to a place where they're like, hey, you know, you want to come this way? We'll give you $500. It's like $500. I can do something very real with $500. And, you know, I like to think I keep playing this scale, and eventually that becomes $500,000 because the bank doesn't know how to do anything except give people loans and give people money. And they rely on people like Elon Musk or, you know, people who are industrious to actually figure out how to translate into real prosperity. Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing that these bankers didn't understand in 2004, 2000. All they knew how to do was create money and create debt, and they just could pay themselves. But they didn't have enough understanding that this can actually do real things. And for those people who can manage to stay, just stay away from the shifting tides of what they tell you you're supposed to do and get more debt. If it doesn't make sense to you or whatever, then, you know, try not to. And you find yourself floating up to the top here where everyone around you is like freaking out. And you're like, I mean, didn't you guys maybe save a little bit of money and just sort of not increase your monthly expenditures just because you felt like you could, you know, just because last month was a good month, you know.
Definitely.
It doesn't mean you go all out. So, but yeah, understanding that though, just that piece of it, that this debt is what creates money, and that's a lot of why the system is the way it is and why it wants you to act in certain ways. I think that's an empowering notion. So.
And on top of that, if you're still here, I posted in the chat the video that we were talking about earlier, which was how the economic machine works. So check that out if you have a chance. Really good breakdown of everything we were talking about and what Kyle was saying with debt and just money in general. So hope you guys enjoyed the stream here. And don't forget to head over to the website, which is down below here, ShirazDeboise.wordpress.com. You can look at old archived streams and just videos and audio recordings that we've done in the past. Mostly movie stuff, but lately we've been getting more into real things, as Kyle put it. The other day I was talking to him. He liked that we're kind of talking to people and talking about more grounded things, not just film. Although we still bring up movies like we did today, like The Big Short. We like talking about movies, so kind of can't stop doing that. But certainly. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Kyle. And we'll probably have you on again, I'm sure. So, but yeah, hope everyone enjoyed.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
Yeah. All right. See you guys later.